Pretty much all of the newest Windows handhelds available these days have a few things in common. They are being powered by a strong but efficient APU. They all have good 720p performance and sometimes 1080p under ideal conditions. And they all come with at least a single Thunderbolt port for easy access to fast data. And that's great because it means we can use it to utilize an external GPU, a full-size desktop graphics card plugged directly into our device. And that's awesome because it allows us to unlock personal computer level gaming on a tiny handheld. But exactly how much power can we get out of this? Surely it's enough to push an AMD RX 580, right? Well, what about a GTX 1070? Well, I've got an RTX card here to test it and see just how far we can push this tiny processor on my Legion Go. But if you're looking for a docking station for your handheld, you should check out the sponsor of this video, Ivony. This is the Ivony gaming dock with RGB. If you're gaming on a handheld and you want a more immersive gaming experience at home or on the go without spending too much money, well, this is the perfect solution for you. Imagine playing your favorite game up to 4K at 120 Hz on your TV or monitor. That 14-in-1 connectivity means you can plug in everything: your monitor, controllers, storage, even wired gigabit Ethernet, without having to swap things around. And of course, there's the RGB lighting. With 7 dynamic lighting modes, you can set the perfect gaming atmosphere, whether you're cranking 90s or just chilling with the boys in Discord. With multiple angles that optimize airflow and give you a comfortable viewing experience no matter how you're using the dock. The dock provides 100-watt output and supports 65-watt fast charging. And with support for the Steam Deck, ROG Ally, and the Legion Go, you can keep your handheld and accessories totally powered so you can focus on gaming. Check out the Ivony gaming dock with RGB at the link in the video description. And thanks again to Ivony for sponsoring this video. Now, like I said in the intro, the Legion Go has some pretty good performance out of the box in 720p and even 1080p sometimes, but it's nothing to write home about, especially if you want to use high resolutions when docked at a monitor. So in this video, we're going to be unlocking the full potential of this Legion Go by plugging in an RTX 3070 to see how much power we can get. The RTX 3070 has a modest power draw, great rasterization performance, and access to all the NVIDIA features like DLSS and RTX voice. But people usually pair this GPU with much more powerful desktop CPUs. But the chip we're working with today is the Ryzen Z1 Extreme. And when stacked up next to each other, yeah, I think we're gonna see where the bottleneck is. And if I'm being totally honest with you, I don't even know if this is going to be worth our time and effort. But damn it, Jim, I'm a YouTuber. So we're gonna do this for science. Realistically, you can use just about any external GPU out on the market. There are some really affordable ones on AliExpress that I've used in the past that worked out really well, and I'll be sure to link them in the video description if you're interested. But today I'm using this one I was sent by a company called Playthings, not because it's any more powerful, but it actually has both a Thunderbolt and Oculink connector on it, which is great for versatility considering I'm always testing different eGPU configurations for different types of content on this channel. But it's kind of expensive, so I recommend going the cheaper route if you can. So we just slide the 3070 into the PCIe slot of our eGPU. And of course, screw down the post to keep it nice and stable if you're a nerd. We do need some external power for this bad boy, and usually NVIDIA recommends using a 600-watt PSU when using this graphics card. That is when it's inside a desktop PC, powering the CPU, drives, and everything else going on inside there. For this, we're only powering the GPU itself, so this 600-watt power supply I had lying around will be way more than enough to get the setup going. If you're planning on getting an eGPU setup yourself and trying to decide on what power supply to get, just grab a highly rated one in the 500 to 600 watts category. They will be fine for just about every GPU out there. And to trick this PSU into thinking we're plugged into a computer, we can use this jumper to get it going. You can technically do this with a paperclip, but these jumpers come with most eGPUs and are way more secure. Otherwise, you can buy them for like $1 on AliExpress, and I think it's worth it. Next, we're going to plug in the CPU cables into the eGPU, as well as the PCIe power cables into the graphics card. After plugging in the Thunderbolt cable into the Legion Go, we can plug our monitor output directly into the graphics card. Now we just need to install our GPU drivers. And since this is an NVIDIA card, we can just use the NVIDIA app to automatically detect our card and detect the drivers. So I've got the eGPU plugged directly into that first Thunderbolt port to get as much performance as we can out of it. Then in the second Thunderbolt port, our dock is plugged into it with our charger, Ethernet, and all of our USB peripherals. And after those drivers finish installing, we should be ready to get started. Just a heads up though, you might not see your GPU fan spinning the entire time you have it plugged in. That doesn't mean it's not working. It's just that most graphics cards these days only kick in their fans under load, or when they hit a certain temperature threshold by default. So if they don't kick in when you're gaming, then maybe you have a problem, but when it's just idling, you're good to go. Oh, and by the way, I did try this with an RTX 5090 already, just for fun, but it doesn't work well. There was lots of crashes and disconnects, and it was just awful. I think it has something to do with it being a PCIe 5 card, but I'm not really sure. I found a lot of people online having a similar problem, so just do your research if you're trying to do this with a 50 series card, as this problem might already be solved if you're watching this in the future. I'm going to be testing the real-life performance of these games at 1440p on the eGPU and comparing it to the raw performance of the Legion Go at 1080p, which is not ideal for AAA games. They usually should be ran in 720p on the device, so there's going to be a lot of numbers thrown at you. Just bear with me because I want to be thorough. And of course, these numbers will all change drastically depending on what graphics card you end up using. Let's start with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, as it was recently released on PC. This game is absolutely beautiful, but dang can it be difficult to run. At 1080p on the Legion Go handheld with low settings, we were only able to average around 21 FPS. Not what I would call playable, but if we dropped it down to 720p, it would probably be a little bit better. Meanwhile, on our RTX 3070 eGPU, at 1440p with all the settings to high, we got an average of 72 FPS. A really great way to play this game, but our 1% lows were a little bit too low for comfort, so I'd probably use DLSS to keep it steady or drop the settings to medium. Either way, this is a fantastic way to play this game. F1 2024 is my new de facto racing game to benchmark because it looks great and is surprisingly well optimized in my opinion. On the Legion Go at 1080p and settings to low, we got 72 FPS average, but 1% lows of 15, meaning there might be a random stutter or slowdown here and there, but is an otherwise okay experience. But on the eGPU, 1440p, all settings to high, we averaged 112 FPS, and the game looks absolutely gorgeous. Once again, our 1% lows are a little under what I'd want in a perfect world, but this is still playable and downright enjoyable. Heck, you can even plug in an entire racing sim rig if you wanted to. Fortnite is a very CPU heavy game, so we might be held back a bit, but we'll see. On the Legion Go at 1080p, performance mode and settings to low, we averaged 118 FPS in an experience that I would call downright playable. But as expected, our 1% lows are abysmal at around 18 FPS, so probably capping the frames at 60 might be the way to go. Meanwhile, on the eGPU at 1440p, DX12 and all high settings, we averaged 140 FPS with 1% lows of 62. Way better performance than I was expecting, and I think it's a great way to play this Battle Royale game. Maybe now I can finally get a kill, but probably not. It's Hitman time, the fantastically slow-paced game from a few years ago. Running around the Paris level at 1080p and all settings to low, we averaged 59 FPS with 1% lows of 41. And I imagine this would be a little bit better at 720p and be a more playable experience. But this is actually still not that bad. And on the eGPU, running at 1440p at all settings to high, we're getting a fantastic average of 112 FPS with 1% lows of 72. More than enough frames to play this game and enjoy all the great visuals from the higher resolution. I'd say this might be the best performance we've gotten so far. The Finals is an amazing esports FPS game from last year, and if you haven't played it, I really recommend it. It has super fast movement, great gunplay, and really puts your graphics to the test. On the Legion Go at 1080p, we are getting an average of 35 FPS with some really bad 1% lows. Looks like that APU just can't handle this game that well. At 720p, it is playable, but I think I'd much rather play it on the eGPU. 1440p, all medium settings, and lighting set to static, we averaged 120 FPS with 1% lows of 42. Sure would have loved those 1% lows to be at least 60, but some further tinkering with the settings might be required. As always, DLSS would be a great way to get a free lift to our FPS. Space Marine 2 is another game that came out recently and is damn hard to run on even the best hardware, so let's give it a shot. I found a particularly heavy part of the game where there's thousands of Tyranid on the screen, and at 1080p, everything to low, we average, well, a slideshow. This is not playable, but damn does it look good. Even at 720p, I think we might struggle to hit 30 FPS. This is bad. But on the RTX 3070 at 1440p settings to high, we averaged 55 FPS with 1% lows of 39. Still not the best performance, but it is leagues above the Legion Go and is totally playable. I think dropping the settings a bit or enabling DLSS would be the way to go to play this game at an absolute crisp and stable frame rate. And to round off our benchmarks, we are ending with the tried and true Cyberpunk 2077. Running the canned benchmark on the Legion Go, 1080p resolution and everything set to low, we averaged 36 FPS with 1% lows of 12. So yes, it's playable, but there might be a hitch here or there. Would be much better performance at 720p. So let's check it out at 1440p. All high settings, we averaged 61 FPS with a reasonable 1% low of 47. A beautiful and respectable way to play Cyberpunk. But again, I would probably bring the settings down to medium or enable AI upscaling to get a slightly more stable frame rate. Still amazing performance. So I think we've proved that this is a totally viable way to use your PC handheld. You can take your Legion Go, RG Ally, what have you, when you leave your house and play on the go. Then when you get back home, just plug it into your eGPU to get a truly fantastic desktop experience. Now, I'm not here to say whether you should, just buy a gaming PC, because I know it's not always about the price. So you'll need to assess your situation and see if this is something you could fit into your setup. For me, I would have no problem doing this for the long run. I'll drop links in the video description to a ton of eGPU products so you can find one that fits your budget, as well as graphics cards that won't bottleneck the hell out of your PC handheld. Thanks as always to the channel members for supporting the channel. And consider becoming a member if you want to support independent creators like myself. My name is Jason. Thanks for watching.